Hello, everyone. Bienvenidos. See people running outside, that's a good sign. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to everyone online as well, and then our guests here in person at the ranch. And welcome to our Visiting Artists Lecture Series. I'm Olivia Martinez. I'm the Children's Program and Community Outreach Coordinator here at Anderson Ranch. Before we begin, Anderson Ranch acknowledges that our campus resides on the traditional ancestral territory of the Ute people, who have called the Roaring Fork Valley and beyond home for over 800 years. A quick reminder to please also silence your cell phones. After the lecture, we will have a short Q&A period, so if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will bring you a microphone at the end of the lecture. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce our visiting artist, Maria de Los Angeles. Maria is a Mexican-born American artist who addresses ideas of migration, belonging, and identity through her drawing, painting, printmaking, and wearable sculptures. She holds an MFA from Yale School of Art, a BFA from Pratt Institute, and an associate degree from Santa Rosa Junior College. In 2023, Maria was awarded the William Aguilar Cultural Award by the American Association of Hispanics in Higher Education. She is currently a full-time critic and assistant director of painting and printmaking at the Yale School of Art. While here, along with working in her studio, Maria has been engaging with the local community through art-making workshops. She is here as part of our larger Latinx arts programming that includes outreach with local schools, educators, and other programming this fall. I would also like to thank the Ann and Chris Reyes Foundation for making these community outreach initiatives possible. Please join me in welcoming Maria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. For everyone who is part of the ranch or has been in the past, such an amazing person, so thank you for doing that. And to Olivia and the team for bringing us here. I'm not here by myself. Ryan Bonilla, my husband, is here. He's been enjoying the snow. And I've been really having a great time exploring ceramics, which is new for me in my practice. And I have a practice that I make all kinds of things. I feel like every time there's a new material, I'm gonna go for it. But this is the latest. And so today, I think I wanna take the time to just introduce my work and what I've been thinking about in the last maybe 7 years since I graduated from Yale School of Art with my MFA. And in terms of my studio practice, our exhibitions, and also my teaching career, which to me is equally important. I am a teacher at heart, and I think all artists are, because we find joy in material and ideas, and we can't really prevent ourselves from sharing that. And I'm going to try to do a good job with the clicker here. So I put this photo up first. This is in Hoboken, New Jersey, and it's across the water from the city, and you can see the skyline on the back. And this is at a skate park ramp. So I'm like maybe 15 feet off the ground. It looks really leveled, and then the photo was taken by my husband, Ryan Bonilla. We've been collaborating on a photo series. I like making the garments, and he's really great at taking photographs. And so this garment here is one of the latest. It was done like 2020, and it combines American flag, traditional like textiles from Mexico, embroidery, and hand-painted, hand-stitch and embroidery, and some vintage tortilla warmers that I got in Ashland, Oregon. And I think that it's interesting how we travel and every place offers you something new. And so Ashland, Oregon gave me a lot of things and a lot of experience, including the tortilla warmers that you see on the chest. And I wanted to include a photo of this installation, which was at Schneider Museum of Art right before the pandemic. I think it was like maybe 2019 or 18. And it was an installation featuring 3 garments or sculptural garments and maybe over 1,000 drawings. There was one student who then later became a student at Pratt while I was teaching there, who put them all up. And it was close to 2,000, I think, 1,500, and took the meticulous time to put them up for me. And it was a fabulous exhibition. It was all 360 cover in drawings, and then the garments are actually really tall, so maybe extending over 9 feet. For the garment series, I started thinking about my own identity as somebody who's like grown up in the U.S. for half my life, and also someone who was brought here by my family from Mexico, and really thinking about where does belonging lie and like how we present ourselves in our everyday. And I think teenagers really think about this. I've been spending a lot of time with teenagers and Olivia at the Basal High School, and they were really excited because they are always thinking about their projection of their identity at that age. And for me, these garments, combine things that I'm like really happy for, really proud, that I like relate to, and that have meaning to me, but also things that are maybe a little bit more difficult, like some of the politics with immigration and growing up with no documents. That was kind of something that I really thought about, being undocumented, and where do you find belonging? And at that age, when you're a young kid, it can be challenging to feel like you belong, but also not legally belong. And here's an installation shot of the garments. They were quite striking. I put this exhibition up because I was really proud of it, the way that the drawings came together. And also the garments as almost three-dimensional collages, almost like drawing themselves. Here are some close-ups. And Scott Malbrown, who's the director of Schneider Museum of Art, was really accommodating and really helped me bring the vision together for this exhibition. I have a big drawing practice, so I do monotype, watercolor, collage, kind of a little bit of everything. Like, you give me a piece of paper and a tool and I'll figure it out. And I think, it has to do with my early education at Santa Rosa Junior College. My teacher there was like really experimental. He would be like, well, you're so good with the brush or like charcoal, all that. How about you draw with like a stick? And he would bring us like handmade carved tools that he would like make for us. So I think it's interesting to like experiment. And so that kind of ideas has really kind of come through my life of like thinking of drawing as like my first foundation in my work. This image here is Ryan Bonilla, who's my husband, wearing red. And this was his photo installation of Polaroids at Colorado College at CC. And actually, because of that exhibition curated by Pauline Nordstrand, is the reason we're here today, because Olivia graduated from CC and saw our work several years ago there. And Ryan does photographs of like our trips and his community and like the people we meet and the places. So I wanted to put this up because it's sort of like a documentation of our experiences. My drawings really range from like universal themes of like family, belonging, motherhood, all kinds of things that are really basic to everyone. And then they also kind of merge into like more political work, work that relates to a specific kind of experience. And for me, this has been, growing up was the idea of being undocumented, and the meaning of citizenship took a strong toll as a young person. And some of the drawings are really imaginary. They're not necessarily from my own experience, and others kind of influenced by media and experience of other people. I use sometimes symbolism, so I don't always depict an actual person that I know. I often think about like ways to combine imagery. So I've always been really interested in like Mesoamerica and also Dia de los Muertos and all those traditions. And there's a long history of artists using like esqueletos, like skeletal structures, to think about like universality, but also like afterlife and the life cycle. So I do often use symbols that I come up with. And then in my work, I also think about kind of playing with like the hierarchy. So you can see like in this drawing on the left, the person is kind of wrapped a little bit, and then the mini characters are also like tiny border patrols. So I have a good time in my studio. I really entertain myself, and I'm like, okay, how can they be like tiny? Like, does that give them power? Do they become humorous? Do they become less intense? And I'm also really considering the meaning of the American flag. To me is something that I really value being in the US, and also like who gets to own it and like the meaning behind it. These drawings here were at the Pacific Standard Time for Los Angeles County Museum before the pandemic. And there were 2 drawings and a dress installed in the exhibition curated by Vincent Ramos. He became a good friend, and we're still in touch with him. And those drawings are done with archival pen and ink. I think when I was in high school, I told the high school students that like I would doodle in my science class with like ball pens, like traditional pens. And so I found this archival ink that looks like a pen, and I just love to draw with it. There are several symbols that come in my work. Also this kind of heart shape. I'm really interested in political cartooning as well. A few years ago, I was having a good time drawing, and I thought about like Rocky the movie and the boxing scenes, and I did this boxing match between Lady Liberty and Guadalupe, and then like some of the other characters sort of show up for the match. So I think it's interesting to there's a long history of comedians and comedy, and thinking about comedy as a way to like transcend grief or transcend trauma. And for me, I've really kind of been thinking about being slightly more funny in my drawings. The ones on the bottom right here are a little different. They borrow from like printmaking, and so it's one sheet of paper, and then I collage another paper to get the two color, and then I draw on top of it. So really thinking about experimenting with the range of my mark making and the materials and the paper. And that kind of need to like scale up, to work big, monumental, has been in me for a long time, but recently I've started to combine the tiny, more quiet drawings that are small with large-scale murals. So I apply the paint directly on the wall, and then I collage or just temporarily set up my drawings around it to think about kind of like a mural in the making, or what does it mean before actually it all kind of comes together. So it's almost like walking into a sketchbook page for me in that way. And here are a few more close-ups of some of the drawings. And they really range at techniques. I was an artist in residence at Museo del Barrio in New York. And somebody walked in and they were like, how many thousands of people made all these drawings? And I think that was kind of cool because it sort of looked like I had a big range of mark making. And it really interests me in the fact that there were several voices, even though you can still tell my voice through the whole thing. This was like maybe 17 by 25 feet, and it was a massive wall drawing. And then the drawings were placed by young students who were apprenticing in the museum. So it was kind of a collaboration at CC because the students got to figure out where to put the drawings. So it wasn't just me telling them, oh, here's a map and here's where everything goes. And for me, that's kind of interesting in terms of like, how do we build a narrative? And what does it mean to have a narrative and have a direct point of view? How can we keep it open? So I was really interested in this idea of like a slightly like non-linear narrative for the pieces. And here's this photo. It's a little dark, but Pauline Nordstrom's on the left, Ryan, myself, museum director, and one of the students who participated in the installation. And you can see the scale as well. So when I graduated from school, many of you maybe gone through grad school, I was quite a little bit frustrated, didn't really know where I wanted to go. And it took me a while to really figure out what exactly I wanted for my pieces. So out of that kind of attempt, I started to make the garments. So the one on the left is called Family Dress. And the material for that one actually came directly from my studio walls, where I had put this like massive wall drawing that looked like a mural. And when I took it down and rolled it up, there was kind of like no more life for it. So thinking about like who I was, I decided to like make this garment. And it turned out really interesting. It was like fascinating to work three-dimensionally after working so many years, maybe like over a decade on 2D. And suddenly that opened up new things for me. And so since that kind of beginning of working 3D and like a painting and a collage in that way, I have really pushed forward. The one on the right is actually hand built, hand stitched. I do everything, nothing is sort of pre-planned. And then I repurpose one whole American flag into the skirt and the neck area. And it has denim, patches, stickers, collage, pins, like all kinds of objects in it. And it's called Opportunity for All. In the back, which I actually don't have in this photo, it has digital printing. And in that case, that also has some handwriting, and that handwriting was actually incorporated by my husband. He has a great hand style. And here's an installation shot of the kind of big wall drawing at Museum of Sonoma County. I had a solo exhibition there in 2019. And that was kind of like my big welcome home exhibit. And as part of the exhibition, I also curated a group show with several 10 artists in the exhibition. And you see the garments in person. And then in the back, you see actually a flag project that I made with students, kind of like banners, and one of my paintings. I've really been thinking a lot about the display of the garments. So the one on the left is suspended. And that dress, that was probably about 2018. And since now we're at this year, I have added so much to it that it's actually really, really long and massive. So that was its first like iteration. And then the one on the right similarly looks quite similar, but I've added the tortilla warmers to it. Here are a few close-ups. So you can see that they're quite textural and they have a lot of tactility and quite hands-on, which is sort of naturally like my touch. I'm like not quite quiet. I'm really sort of in there. And just wanted to show you some of the stitching. The question of me doing the hand stitching in the machine, having a sewing machine do it because it's faster, has come up. But I'm really interested in the actual stitch as a mark, as a drawing mark, and keeping it both in its beauty, its aggressiveness, and like the kind of hand touch to it. The one on the left is a photo at Sonoma County, Bay Area, close to where I grew up. And I love that photo, and there's actually a video as well. A lot of this photography is by my husband, Ryan Bonilla. I love the landscape there. It's quite like tilted because the wind is so strong. And actually, if you were there, it was quite windy. I was like trying to stand on this like massive rock. And that in itself was quite beautiful because this very large dress was trying to take me down, you know. And for a while, when I was a resident at Museo del Barrio, I did like a performance where I had like maybe 25 people put on garments. And then some children like actually took some of my materials and made a garment themselves. And so I've always been interested in like the community aspect to the work. And this is our young friend wearing the piece. And her question was, why is it so big? But she loved it. And here is a really old photograph from those types of performances that I did. And this must have been 2016, 2017. I had just finished graduate school. And the dresses here were made with like Tyvek, rice paper, recycle paper making patterns, so it was a little bit different. So my drawings have really evolved. I've been trying to push the scale, both as like a mural scale and also just in terms of larger drawings. The one on the left is like 22 by 30. Actually, both of them are the same size, and I have really been exploring some of the imagery, both the political and also the kind of spiritual aspect of imagery. These are gouache on paper, and they're for me really fun to do because it's a way for me to bring a lot of images together. Like, you know, one character appears in a small drawing by itself, and it's like, oh, well, how can it kind of live with other ones and start to create a vocabulary, a series of icons or iconography in my work. I'm really inspired by, you know, Marc Chagall and a lot of the kind of surrealist artists as well. So some of these pieces start to bring that. And it feels really tiny. Well, actually, this feels really big on this screen, but they're quite large on paper, archival paper, 300-pound. And I'm really interested now in like letting the paint kind of do its thing. So sort of wet application, almost like a watercolor, and then coming in with line drawing that is really control, but also thinking about the idea of it following the image, and then sometimes maybe it not being part of the image, just like in a way like Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock and that kind of artists were thinking about in terms of like the role of drawing, like what is drawing there for. Sometimes it can sort of be free from depiction. My painting, so the one on the left, it's sort of one that was a breakthrough for me. It was maybe 2018, 17, and for me, this one really brought in a lot of aspects of like my cultural background. I think for a long time, I wasn't really there as a Mexican American or as a Mexican person in the US. A lot of my heritage wasn't really coming through. And this was the first one where I was like, I don't know, somehow the scale, the palette, and a lot of the way that I was drawing sort of just appeared. And it was the beginning for the series of paintings. So the one on the left is the kind of first one to really do those things. And then the one on the right was sort of sequentially after. And I've really been layering them. So I'm really thinking about them being really kind of open in kind of large areas of like sea or large areas of color. And then also being kind of texturally and visually compacted, layered. And you can see that I really took that layer idea quite far to the point where I was like building some sort of texture and thickness into the paintings. And then I really was thinking about like using metallics and gold and reflection. So when you're in person in this work, you can kind of see it reflect the way that you see like really embellished paintings in like maybe per se a church, or really kind of beautiful gold leaf paintings like by Marc Chagall, or another option would be like the way that a street wall feels, like graffiti art. It just feels sort of layered by different voices, and I'm really kind of fascinated by that. So that is almost 4 by 5 feet. So it's a little bit smaller than the black material around the window. And so the scale is acrylic. I used to paint in oils a lot when I was a student, and I feel like I kind of had it all over me and my hands and everything, and I was getting quite allergic. So I switched to acrylic, which allows me to build stably, quite layered. And this painting probably took me a few years. So some works take me a few minutes or an hour, and others take me years. And here is sort of two other paintings, 5 by 7 feet and maybe 4 by 5 feet. So you can see that I'm sort of exploring scale. There's quite a flare imagery inside the paintings at a smaller scale, where you can see it almost like the size of a pencil, to like sort of the much larger depictions. And this work kind of, the one on the right here is actually my studio, in the ceramic studio right now. And the one on the left is already in a private collection. So if you, after the lecture, if you want to walk over, you can see it in person, and you'll see sort of the difference between the projection and the real piece. This is maybe 5 by 7 feet, and it's in the private collection now in California. I really like this one a lot because of a palette. One of the things that it's not quite happening here is that when the piece is in front of you, it kind of fluctuates in and out, kind of figure-ground relationship changes, and it has a really interesting mobility to it. And so here are a few more, exploring all kinds of imagery and embedding smaller things that you kind of, it takes a long time to see my work. I'm either really fast, like you see it quickly, or it takes a long time to sort of enjoy the pieces. I've always been navigating those 2 points. Here is sort of a big painting on the left, one of my latest, and then you can see the close-up on the right. So even within the close-up, there are many more things to see. And this is probably like 4 by 5 or 6 feet. So they're quite large, in acrylic as well. And this piece has gold and silver reflection and line. So it does kind of shimmer with you moving around it. Since 2019, I started to get in public art. Pratt Institute invited me to paint a window. They had this massive, like 20 feet, like 25 feet window area. And they were like, why don't you like put something on it as sort of a feature as an alum? And it lasted 2 years. It was destroyed since. And it was my first time sort of thinking about public space beyond just like the intimate museum or cultural center space or school, and thinking about like pedestrians walking by. And it was a really fun piece to paint. You can see this is an inside. I actually was on the other side of the glass working. And it really inspired me. I think eventually I want to do stained glass at a big scale. The first time that I actually painted directly on a wall, to think of it as almost like a mural, was at Schneider Museum of Art. Skull Marlborough was like encouraging me to do this. And this was also a temporary mural. At the end of the 5 or 6 month exhibition, it was wiped. And for me, that's also fun because one pieces can last for like a long time, and others can be just a year, just 5 months. And there's sort of a fun in that. It's also a freedom. Like as an artist, you're like, okay, it doesn't have to be like as thought out. It can just live in its gesture, right? Here are a few close-ups. And since, I have really been expanding public art, I think it's always been with me, thinking about muralism since I was a quite young person. So this is a 7 feet by 15 feet acrylic public mural exterior. And from far, it looks almost abstract, but there is actually a dance circle inside of it, and you don't quite see it right away. And we did a huge celebration in Glen Ellen, California, where the mural is. It's downtown. So if you're ever there, you will see one mural on either side of this building. And this is one side. And we had a Galagetza dancer. It was just quite festive and beautiful. And then this is the other mural. This one is 12 feet by 12 feet, acrylic. And it's a permanent installation in Glen Ellen, California. And it was brought on by the Sonoma Valley Museum of Art and the building owner and the town. Usually I come up with a design, kind of a fresh idea of what I want, and then I sketch. I make hundreds of drawings to come up with the imagery, and then from there I paint them. This one here is currently on view and permanently installed at the Sutter Regional Hospital in Northern California in Santa Rosa, California. And it's in kind of the children's area. There's a lot of patients coming in and out, and for this one, I focus on the valley, the landscape itself, keeping it quite minimal, and it's quite colorful, and everyone really likes it at the hospital. and I'm wearing that dress in front of the mural. And it's been really fascinating working with architects and designers for real space to come up with work for the community. And this exhibition here on the right, that's at Mesa College. We did a show actually a few months ago at Mesa College. It was a 2-person show with Ryan. And that is one of the dresses I showed you earlier. And you can see the printing and all kinds of things going on it. And I'm about to do the unveiling for this mural. And this mural is from my home college, Santa Rosa Junior College, in the foundation. It's the foundation house, which their goal is to actually support students financially. And this will be in their meeting office where they meet all the patrons and donors for the students. And it is 8 feet by 17 feet. And it's my latest. Nobody has seen it. Well, everyone online and here has seen it. But you don't see all of it. So it's sort of a sneak peek for you all. This is sort of one of my latest exhibitions that just closed. And it was the Constitution Show at Crystal Bridges Museum of Art. And you can see the large-scale dress that I was mentioning that I kept adding to is on the left. And Jerry Schneider, who used to work for Pratt, Austin Baron Bailey, who's the chief curator, and Caitlin Garcia Mastas, who's a curator of the Socrates Sculpture Park now. And then on the right side, you recognize Austin Baron Bailey, chief curator, and Hillary Clinton, who came there and got to see the exhibition. And then I'm here at Anderson Ranch. And this is the crew. We've spent the last 3 weeks together. And so I'm really grateful to Mary Margaret and Joanne for teaching me so much about ceramics. I didn't really realize like fabric, you can move around, it goes back, it moves. It doesn't have like that kind of intensity of structure. And I think they have done so well teaching me as much as they can about ceramics. So here is in the glazing room. When I got here, I was like, how am I going to do ceramics? So I started to make a lot of drawings. So I made like, I don't know, they're all in the studio, you can see them. And I was like, okay, what is the ceramic to me? How can I like push it? And so I made a bunch of drawings on watercolor, gouache, and ink on paper. These are some photos, actually, me trying to build something out. And then we were doing a technique where we use like a gold line and add to the plates. And here's Joanne teaching me how to do it. And this is us. You know, collaboration is almost impossible. So Joanne is an amazing hand sculptor and makes these beautiful containers, beautiful bowls. And I painted them. And I think they're called moon jars, right? And I painted them, and we're actually waiting for them to come out to see the final look. Here are some of my ceramics that I've done. I made plates, hand-painted plates. Some of them are just directly kind of gesturally painted, and others I built kind of like a low-relief sculpture where some of the images are a little bit higher than the surface of the plate. And I made, I think, I haven't counted, but I think about 25 plates. And you can come through and see them. Here are a few more. And just really trying to think about drawing in relationship to the plate and color. And part of the fun is that like you don't really know what the color's going to be until they're fully done. And it can be quite surprising because I mean I feel like I've over the years have really learned control, and like I have too much control over my things. And this process has really taught me like, oh, there can be a surprise, and like you never really know what's going to happen. The one on the right has like a 3-dimensional rose in it in the middle. Here are a few more, and I went through some of my classic drawings, like some of the images that I've been thinking about for a long time. Here's a kind of sneak peek of the studio, and you can see the painting is there and some watercolors and plates, and you're all welcome to come by after the lecture. Here I am, and some more of the plates. And part of my experience here has been engaging with Basalt High School through Olivia's programming, and kind of one of the main reasons why I'm here. And we made modified hoodies with the high school students. We actually used printmaking, so they got to carve their own block, kind of a soft lino block, and then they got to print it, and they got to do all kinds of things to the hoodies. And I think they took them home this week. So they were so excited. They were posting it on social media, which actually is a sign that they loved it. You know, and then today we had students from the journalism class come and do a full interview in Spanish, and they're newcomers, actually, both groups. And for me, that's a huge thing because I came to the US at their age. So actually, I was a little bit younger than them. So I can only imagine like the transition in terms of language, and high school is kind of intense. So like that whole experience, and it was fun for them to like ask me questions about like thinking about how I got here, like being an artist and like what it takes to be an artist. And then they're there doing some B-roll. And then lastly, you know, I'm really interested in education, like whether it's murals. On the left, during my exhibition at Crystal Bridges, we had this interactive wall where people got to write, like, what does the Constitution mean to them, and voting and all those things. And so the huge mural actually had all these little pieces of paper where people wrote the meaning that they have in relationship to the Constitution. And then lastly, as you know, I'm also currently now, I taught at FIT, Pratt Institute, Southern Oregon University, and now I am a full-time critic and assistant director of painting and printmaking at the Yale School of Art, which has been a beautiful experience, and I'm staying on with the team now longer, and I've been learning a lot. By being back, actually it feels like I'm back in school, you know, back in grad school in some way, even though it's really changed how I was when I was there. I get to learn a lot about like my own practice, what they're making, and really support them through their journey in their MFA program. And I'm really proud to be a professor at Yale now. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. Wait, I'm kind of escaping you. I think this is the Q&A portion.
Yeah, so I have a microphone. If anyone has a question, you can just raise your hand. I'm going to bring you the mic so our online listeners can hear you.
Okay. So I loved your art. It's so free. And I had a question. The paintings that are very intense, like with lots of color, are they on canvas with acrylic? You didn't mention whether it was on paper or canvas.
They're on canvas and it's acrylic, and I hand paint every aspect of them. And some of them take me like maybe half a year, and some take me like 5 years. So there are actually some paintings that I started in grad school, like 1 or 2 where I didn't know where I was going with it, and suddenly it kind of grew over the 5-year period.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where can we see your work here at
Oh.
the ranch? Where?
My studio is in the ceramic shop just down the block here across the street, and you can see the plates, drawings, and a painting.
No.
But somebody will guide you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love your work too. It's fabulous. Very inspirational. I've got 3 quick questions for you. Your pieces that you do outside, if they're acrylic, do you spray them with anything to protect them?
Yes, they're coated with like 5 or 7 layers of a UV protection coat, like it's a varnish, to prevent them from being deteriorated by the weather and the sun.
Okay, and your very large pieces, do you project them or you do freehand?
I do everything freehand. Even when I'm doing the murals, I have this kind of small digital sketch of what I want, and then I go freehand at a 20-foot scale.
So you just stand back, you draw and you stand back, and you draw and you stand back?
No, I just sort of have it here and I just draw it out.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I have to, it's kind of tricky because I'm sort of very spontaneous, and then I have to like stay by what my plan is to the architects and the committee. So I do have to like once in a while be like, oh, like, is it still blue? Like, you know. But yeah, I do everything sort of by hand, no tracing.
Okay, and my last question is, have you ever done a runway show?
Oh, yes, I did like a semi-performance where I had people wear garments, and but that was in 2017, and I would be interested to do it again. As long as I have the right participants who want to do it, and all ages, all styles count. So it's kind of fun to do something like that always.
Hi. So when you arrived in this country, you said you were probably like 11 or around 11. And were you already drawing all the time?
Yeah, I was drawing in the south of Mexico. I grew up in a farming family. And so even back there, I was already making drawings. I was really interested in nature then because I was sort of surrounded by it. And yeah, I was already there, but I think until I got to the US and I was like really in like an art class in 7th grade, that was when it all kind of began, yeah.
Wow.
I don't have any of those drawings. I think my grandma in Mexico might have some, yeah.
So, hi. I have a question about your use of the flag. When I was going from 6th grade to 7th grade junior high, we took a class in the summer and we studied the how you're supposed to use the flag and all the things about it. It should never be in the rain. Have you studied that, or do you think about that when you do things like this, when you manipulate it like this?
Yeah, and there are actually several writers who've written about like the censorship of the use of the flag in protests and by certain people of color and demographics, and then how that was kind of like a strategy in a way to like control the use of the flag back then. So I really am interested in like all that kind of like social and political meaning to like using the flag in a different way than it's supposed to. A lot of the flags in the dresses you saw were donated to me by a veteran center because they were like, we have a box of flags, like we don't want to throw them out either. And I was like, why don't I turn them into an artwork? And they gifted them to me. So when I do it to the flags like this, actually comes out of love. And like people always like relate to that, even in different states. I've done shows in pretty much like maybe 10 states now, and like people always kind of gravitate. And so I think it's interesting to think about like the meaning and like how we use it and who gets to own it.
Loosen it up, because it was supposed to be, I mean, if it gets worn or anything, you're supposed to burn it.
Yeah.
And you're not doing that, so.
No, I really do it out of love. And I actually like so many of the different garments use the flag, and they were a gift. So I consider it as a way to kind of give them new life.
I've seen that you're asking for them on Facebook, I think.
Yeah, I did put a post up saying like if anyone had any, because I don't know if I want to like fully buy brand new ones. You know, I think they had a life and they were displayed and they lived, you know, their meaning. So it might be, I don't know yet if I want to buy one yet. I haven't bought any.
Yeah, I'm all for reusing and giving new life to old things.
Yeah.
Else? Another question.
You mentioned one of the painting being your breakthrough piece. Can you tell us more about it?
Let me see if I can like forward it. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, in school, like I could be any kind of painter. I was like trying everything. Every week there was like a new style or a new way of applying paint, and I think I did that all the way through undergrad, and for most like half of graduate school. And maybe this piece, maybe it was around 5 years after, maybe 4 years after I graduated from school, I started to explore like various aspects of me, like as a person. And so like I think that the center figure in a way kind of borrows from like maybe Frida Kahlo, maybe the Guelaguetzas, because actually there was a Guelaguetza I visited in Santa Rosa, California, and they hold flowers. And they have braids and the skirts and everything. And I'm really inspired. In Santa Rosa, California, there's a huge tradition of cultural like practices. So I brought that, and then I also have kind of like my sugar skull. And you know, to tell you the truth, I think the people around us teach us all the time. Like we learn from our teachers, but also our friends and the children and the community that we're with. Because I was a little bit stuck right after grad school because I could just do anything. Like I was all over the place, and I had a lot of unfinished paintings, and it's been really great guidance, like meeting Ryan Bonilla, who is like my artist friend we have a studio in Jersey City at Mana Contemporary. That's where we met. And he's been a great mentor in terms of like really kind of helping me kind of guide my imagery. So this was the first one I did that I was like, oh, there's like something quite unique. And I think that's the key. I think when we make work, we have to look for what is you, like what makes you your work and what makes it unique to you. And so this was one of the first moments that I felt that my paintings were moving in that direction. I think my drawings have always been me. So, you know, I feel very comfortable in the drawing world, but paintings were a little bit more of a stretch. I also was using less chromatic color in grad school and in undergrad. And this was the moment where the color, the drawing, and the imagery sort of all clicked together. I hope that answers the question.
Hi. My question relates to your installation piece, the one with all the one where you mentioned that someone said it looked like thousands of people had made them.
Uh-huh.
So I guess my question is, when you were making those works, did it feel like you were channeling and amplifying different voices, or was it all you?
I think this question is a really important one, and I think that installation is all the way at the beginning, so I'm not going to keep scrolling. I think at first I was like people try to sit down in my studio because Museo del Barrio has this open studio format where you're actually inside the museum and there's an exhibit and then there's your space and people can just walk in and out. It's kind of like here, it's very open. You can step in and stuff. And at first I was like, ow, like, oh my God, like they think that this is done by different people, different ages, different kind of content. And then after I realized that actually that was a great thing, because I was sort of bringing in different voices and really had arranged my technique. My works, they don't all reflect my own story. Some of them are based on like my life experiences, from like knowing how it feels to like bite into a tangerine or something, or an apple, to like what it feels like to hold something. So I do use like physicality of experience in my pieces to like make them kind of feel real. And also some of it is to do with like my own biography and like my story and like who I am and my family. But others are inspired by people, you know, images from the internet or other artists. So I do have a range of inspiration in my work.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Well, don't forget to pop by Maria's studio after this if you want to check it out.
Yeah, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to Anderson Ranch and to the community here in Snowmass.